And we're pretty well centered. Hey, everybody. We are getting it together here. All right, sorry, I'm just having one of those moments. Hey, can you, Alyssa? Oh, here. This is so odd. Why is this not coming up over here?
Well, it doesn't look like the page is loading fully.
Okay.
Maybe click on...
Okay.
Maybe on Facebook, click on videos. Maybe it'll show up there. It's...
Nope, those are stored videos.
Let me see if it's actually live.
Yes, please. Okay, wait a second, recent posts. That's just, oh, here we go, live, I got it. I don't know why that was so hard, but it just likes to give me a heart attack at the last minute. Hey guys, ooh, we are getting underway. I wandered around with my scrap paper and lost it. If you could grab a little piece for me when you get a chance, and I would appreciate it. All right, you guys, it is on the hour, so we are good to go. That looks like the one I lost. Perfect. Sad. Okay, how's everybody doing today? Thumbs up? Thumbs up. All right. So this is Jackie at the Studio for Art and Craft. I suppose no surprises there. Excuse me. And tonight we are doing the Bloomin' Beauty. Now the Bloomin' Beauty that you guys have is a tray, okay? And as you can see, it's really, really big, which is a lot of fun. And I wanted to see how it might look on a plate, so I also have done it on a plate. And that's something to keep in mind for our next painting too, because that one's on a plate. I know, I feel like I'm going to make you crazy with that, right? But it's on a plate like this, but it would also look really good on a platter. So this one's called Pennsylvania Dutch, and we will be doing this one next Tuesday. So here's what your plate looks like now that I've marked mine all up. All right, you've got it all in front of you. Yeah? Hey there. Nice to see you. All right, so you have that. It's got this circle. This is, I think, one of the very few, if not the only plate that actually does not have a center dot. So we're going to be working with the circle and then the rays. You have your 5 colors in the order in which we're going to use them. You have your dampened paper towel to clean your tool with, and you have your tool. All right, and just as a reminder, the tool has 8 tips, starting with the smallest one, which is number 1, and going all the way up to the largest one, which is number 8. So a couple of things we're going to do a little practice on before we get started today is, and just grab an old piece of scrap paper. In addition, this one, it works out pretty well in terms of, I always talk about the viscosity of the different colors and how you need to know what you're doing. And I'm going to talk about that one a little bit more when we get started because it's going to be really important. But I'm just going to go through the techniques right now. We're going to pick a tip. Let's just call it tip 4. And you're just going to dip in your color and dot on your paper. Dip and dot, dip and dot. The main thing you're looking for here is consistency in your dot size. Okay? So that's what dip and dot you're going for. You can also try doing that with another color. Dip and dot, dip and dot. And here's what I mean. If this, I'm using tip 4 on both of these, on both the salmon and the blue, and you can see that the dot comes out a different size. And that's due to the viscosity of the glaze, nothing that you're doing or I'm doing. So I've taken that into consideration already in the design, but I just like to let people know that, so that if you want to change up the colors, which of course you're welcome to do, always test it out first. So the other thing that we'll be doing quite a bit of is dot, dot, dot. I know, I've given them brilliant names. So I'm just going to use my tip 6 in the purple just so it can stand out for you. Instead of just dipping and then going back, I'm going to dot, 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 dot. All right, so you can see that when you do that, your dots get successively smaller. I'm just going to make a big dot over here and show you something. So I just used that tip, and now I'm going to grab another tip. I'm going to start with tip number 3 just to show you this. I'm going to use the green. All right, so what I'm going to do, another technique that we do is where I start at the top and I put a dot here and then I go around it. But here's the thing, when I go, I'm using tip 3. When I want to go back and do the other side, I'm not going to start with tip 3. I'm going to start with tip 2, because tip 2 will give me a dot about that size. And if it doesn't, you can always make a dot bigger. Okay, the challenge with dotting is, it's not a challenge, the reality of dotting is that you can't make a dot smaller, you can only make it bigger. So you always want to err on the side of a little smaller and the ability to make it bigger. So when you're dotting around and you're starting, I'm going to do it again outside of that with a large dot at the top. And you can make your dot larger by just leaving your tip down and letting more glaze go onto your surface. All right, we're just going to go all the way around to the bottom. And then I'm going to go down a size with a good dip and just work my way around on the other side. And by starting with a tip that's a little smaller, my dots come out more even. And the last thing I want to work on, I want to show you and let you play with a little bit before we get into it fully, hey Janet, is dragging. You have those drags at the end. I just want to introduce that to you now. So we're going to be doing the dragging with tip number 5. So let's practice it with tip number 5. And we're going to be doing it in the purple, but really I don't think that matters. So when you drag toward a dot, you're going to start away from it, and the first drag is always in the middle and is somewhat straight. And all that is I'm going to just do one over here. Put it down, and then I kind of take a little of the pressure off of it. So when I'm going down, I'm not holding a lot of pressure. I dot, and then I ease up on the pressure and just pull the paint down. And then on each side, I do the same thing, but then I add a little curve, okay, on each side. So I don't do a straight like the first one. And in this case, we're going to do several. These are very small because I don't have a big piece of paper. But when you do it on your plate, you're going to do them much larger. So you're going to place it down there and then just lift it up and just drag it down. So take a couple of minutes. That one I ran into it. Paper, not a great substitute for pottery. But I don't want you to do them for the first time on your plate. Okay? So those are all the different steps we're going to do in this plate. We're just going to do them in a certain order, in certain colors, and have a good time. So you guys tell me if you're ready. Remember, I'm always be checking for comments throughout our, just making sure my comments are on. Okay. Yeah, I'll be checking you for comments. So please, if you have any questions, you need me to repeat something, slow down, speed up, tell me how beautiful your plate is. Any of that I'm interested in. And then I'll be asking you as we're finishing up a step, are you ready for the next step? And you'll just let me know that by just hitting your thumbs up sign. So if you guys are ready, we're going to get started. And again, interestingly, right, we're not going to start in the middle like with a dot like we always do. We're going to actually start on that circle that you have that's etched, and we're gonna line up our dots on that circle with the ray. Okay, so you can see a ray is here. It doesn't exactly intersect, but we can just put it at the bottom of it. It doesn't really matter. The reason we're lining them up with the rays is for spacing purposes. It does not make a line, so it's not a big deal if you're off a little bit. Just thought I'd tell you that. And we're gonna work with that salmon color to start with, which should be the first color, and we're gonna use tip number 3. And we're gonna dip and put a dot on the circle. And we're gonna, now here's the way I like to do this. I don't, even though we are eventually gonna do one for every ray, my first go round, I skip a ray. So I'm gonna do it, I started mine on a long ray here. It, again, doesn't matter. So I'm gonna skip the short ray and I'm gonna put one over here. Skip and dot. Skip and, I'm coming back, sorry. Now, one of the things I didn't mention is you guys all have a paper placemat with you. If you want to move your plate, the best thing to do is to pick up the placemat and turn it. I'm on a turntable, so I'm, you know, have it a lot easier. Try to touch your plate as little as possible, and try to turn, especially when you turn your plate, instead of turning the paper placemat, it rubs some of the glaze off the bottom of your plate, and I don't know that until after I fired it. And that will cause me to have to double fire your plate, you know, to do it again once, because I don't discover that that's happened until I take it out of the kiln. And the problem with that is that I don't like to double fire, because the more times it's in the kiln, as far as I'm concerned, the more opportunity for something to go wrong. So I'm going and I'm using tip 3 in the salmon on every other ray right now. Sometimes when you put a dot on the etchings, it'll have these funky little indentations. Do not worry about those. Those melt out in the kiln. All right, so that's what you've got for your first go round. And then what we're gonna do is we're actually then going to use the same tip and the same color and put a dot in between. I find it easier to get good spacing, like I said, by doing it this way. I don't really care if they line up with the rays. I really care that they don't run into each other. So dot lightly in between. You can always make that dot bigger. You can't make it smaller. And once it's kissed the dot next to it, you can't, I don't want you to try to unkiss it. I know it's like making up my whole own vocabulary here. But the point is, we deal with that at the end. Not now. It's much easier to deal with dry, fixed dry glaze than wet glaze. All right, so we've got a nice, by the time you're done, you're gonna have this nice ring of dots. So I think that's making sense to everybody. Okay. Sometimes I wish we were doing these on Zoom so I could see you guys making yours, not just me making mine. All right, because this is the first step, I'm just gonna make sure and look for some thumbs up from you guys to make sure I'm waiting on you. Thank you, Janet. Can always count on you. Let me know. So we're actually gonna drop down a dot size. We're gonna go to dot size number 2, and the same color, still that salmon. And what we're gonna do is go inside, and we're just going to do what I call triangulate. So you're going to make a small dot. Let me get my pointer tool here. All right, your small dot in between 2 of your first dots, so that put together they make a little triangle. And I do this, I do the same thing on this that I did on the other one, which is I might skip one so that I have a chance to make sure that I have them spaced out well, because I can always choose not to put the ones in between if I want to. Oops, I don't want to move that away where you can't see it. Now sometimes I mess it up and that I lose that option, but I hardly ever don't put them there, so it doesn't matter. So I'm doing every other one. Nice little dot. And then go back and fill in if you want to. So I look at mine, I have my every other dot, and I'm like, you have 2 choices. You can use the same tip, or you can go down a size. If you're not sure you have a lot of room, you can go down to a tip number 1 in between. But again, whenever you're putting the first dot down of using a new tip size, err on the side of a light tip so that you don't have a run-on problem. All right, I did get a kissing dot here, so I'm gonna do as I say and leave it alone. Do nothing. Going to do nothing for right now. So I'm gonna wait while you finish up that step. All right, we good? So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna take tip 4 in the same color and we're gonna triangulate on the outside. Now, as we go outside from the middle, you're going to have a lot more room, so you'll have a lot less issues about trying to fit things in. So I'm just gonna put, the main thing here is to make sure you're far enough away from your already done dots that you don't run into them. So again, go nice and lightly with your touch, because if you touch it all the way down, you might let too much paint go. So just a nice light touch in between the two that are on the next row. So you're gonna make a nice little triangle all the way around. One of the things that's always funny about, the steps that we start with is that they're so major when we're doing them because they're the only things on the plate. And they just think like, oh no, every dot is critical. But as you well know, once we get things underway, you hardly even remember doing this round of dots. They just are here to form a base. Okay? So that's going to be our next circle of center dots. And I will say that if you want to, I don't really want to do that. I was going to say you could use your tip number 1 to put dots on all the way on the inside, but I'm not going to do that on mine because my circle is mine is spaced so that it's small enough that I really don't need to. I already have a good center. But if you feel like there's too much air in there for you, you could try to do the small dots. It can be kind of challenging because they can end up, a lot of them, touching each other. And again, it's clean upable. And I'll show you that at the end once this dries. All right, so how are we doing? And you can do that at any point. You can even do that at the end. So how are we doing on finishing up this part, everybody? All good? We've got our third circle of dots. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on to tip 7. We're still sticking with the same color, and we're going to use tip 7. And what we're going to do is put 1 dot in triangulated between the ones we just put down. But remember, leave a little room for this because you don't want it to run in. Okay. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do one of these between each set. I'm a liar. I don't like what I did. I did not even look at my own directions, so I apologize. Coming over here, I'm going to start over so you can see it better. We're just going to do it on the short ray. I don't know why I didn't look at my own directions, because I just did this 2 days ago. That's why. And I thought I remembered it. So we're just going to put 1 dot on every short ray. So I'm going to actually clean mine up so that since I'm the teacher, I can't really have a mess, can I? And also, I don't care if I take my base coat off because I'm not keeping this. So I'm going to leave that wet spot alone. So every short ray, you're going to triangulate. I apologize profusely for not saying that correctly. I'm just going to do this half of the plate for right now. Let me see if I can work this out on where I've... Yeah, that worked. Okay. Every other ray, just the short rays. All right, so it's only going to be 8 of these. All right, ignore that wet spot. So I'll wait till you guys get those done. So you should have 8 big dots by the time we're done. And once we've got those done, we're going to start teardropping. Okay, and that's what I was showing you with the dot, dot, dot around these dots. So we're going to use tip number 1, same color, and we're going to start at the top and put a dot, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3. That's a, whoops, ran out of paint. 1, 2, 3 on each side. Okay, don't want to try to cram too many in. Now this is a tip number 1, there is no smaller tip. So you're going to use this tip all the way around. So I put a dot at the top and 3 on each side. Yours might be different if you're a lighter dotter than me, but for this one, we're going to do so many rows of this that there really isn't a big reason to try to get in more. So we just want to do the foundation. So dot at the top, and then 1, 2, 3, dip again, lightly, 1, 2, 3. All right, any questions on this? 1, 2, doesn't matter which side you dot first. I sometimes dot the left first and sometimes dot the right first. Shouldn't matter. Hope I didn't throw anybody off with that mistake earlier. 1, 2, 3. It's funny, you know, because it's one of the things that makes it different to do it live. If I was just doing a video, I could just start over, but I can't do that. Okay. How's that working for you guys? Okay? Hey, Susie. All right. Well, the next 2 steps are pretty much the same. We just did that with tip 1. We're going to now do the same thing with tip 2. So right above that row, we're going to start with a tip size 2 dot and come all the way around. That one will likely have 4 on each side. Now make sure you're going for your teardrop shape, so you're coming out and then curling back in. So, and now here's what's going to happen. You're going to run into each other. That's fine. Don't get too close to dots you've already done. To be honest, I say this almost every week, and it's true. Some people are worried. It's like, well, what if I don't have the same number of dots on each side? And my experience is, I think I've yet to do a plate, to be honest, where I have the same number of dots on each side all the time. It's clearly not a big deal. It's the overall effect that you're going for. So we're using tip 2 with the salmon. My turntable is not turning well tonight either. What the heck? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm definitely having issues. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, and I can count tonight too. That's a big day for me. Okay. All right. We're in recovery. One, two. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. And then after tip 2, I know this is like not really a surprise, but after we do this teardrop, we're going to do one more, same color, just using tip 3. Okay, so this was tip 2. So we had our big dot on every other ray, use the small rays, and then we did a tip 1 teardrop and the tip 2 teardrop that you're finishing up now. And then we're going to do a tip 3 teardrop. And remember, especially on the tip 3, really work on that teardrop shape so that it has that nice coming inness. Sometimes you might even want to start up a little higher than you're expecting to. I'll show you, like I might come up a little bit just to make sure I can keep that teardrop shape. It doesn't become round. And they should run into each other is the best way I can describe it on this one. So when I come down on this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, that last one is on the long ray. And when I start over here, that last one is going to be the last one on this teardrop as well. 1, 2, 3, and then it's also that teardrop. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then over here it'll be 1, 2, 3. In this case I have 2 of them. So points out the inconsistency. There we go, that one's dead on. So therefore on this one I'm going to have, I don't want to go over that one. So even with this big whiteout over here, you can still see the essence of this design. You can see our bloomin' beauty starting to bloom. Yes, I know I'm corny. I'm well aware. Let's see how you guys are doing. No comments? No comments. Okay, if you don't comment, I'm going to talk back to myself. That's not good. And then I'm just going to finish it up. 1, 2, 3, and come back in the middle. So that's actually how we finish this step up. All right. We're going to make that nice teardrop so that the teardrop kind of ends on the long ray in between. And we've got a nice flower shape for our middle. We give you guys a few minutes a little bit of time to finish that up. So go ahead and give me a thumbs up when you've got it done, and then I'll know. I know. Here comes a shocker. We're actually going to change colors after this. All right, how we doing, Janet? How we doing? All right, so now we're going to go back to tip 7, and we're going to go into the yellow, and we're just going to put a dot in between on the long ray. It doesn't have to be too close in, because I want you to be able to press that dot flat out. And this is what I mean. I'm going to clean my tip off because I don't want these big dots to be too domey. If you make them if they dome up a lot, the paint may crack. I noticed this on the further out ones more, but we might as well practice good dotting behavior now. So when you dot them, let them spread out. All right. Not too close to your salmon color. Give it some air. We have plenty of room on this platter for this design. Okay. So if yours look very domey when you're done, you can just tap, tap, tap and take a little bit of the glaze back off and just put that on your paper. Okay, some of them are a non-issue. I just usually look at the bottoms of them. If they're not taking any glaze off, then you don't have too much glaze. And I'll show you what I mean. This is the first platter that I did, and you can see when you look at it, particularly when we get to the next 2 levels, they all have a little crack in them in the color. The green does, even some of the yellows do over here. Okay, but the greens definitely do, and the blues definitely do. So when I did my second version, Okay, I did the technique I'm doing now, which is I'm taking the paint glaze off, and you can see that I don't have that problem at all. I have no cracks. I am crack free. Do what you want with that information. Okay, so we have big yellow dots. All right, big yellow dots. We're going to teardrop the same way as we did on the salmon dots. The only difference is going to be that we're going to do 4 rows. And the reminder I'm going to give you is remember to start what I call start high so you get a teardrop shape. So if I start with my yellow color and my tip number 1, I don't have to go close to this one. I'm going to come up here and then work my way in. So make sure I'm keeping that teardrop shape. You don't have to get right in there with it, okay? You don't want to touch anything else with your color. So I'm doing 1, 2, 3 on this one. It doesn't matter how many dots you have. Mostly matters that they don't touch something else. In my case, 3 seems to be my magic number. Yours could be 4. Depends on how delicate or heavy a dotter you are. So give yourself room and try to maintain that teardrop shape. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect, thank you. All right, so I'm starting up a little high so I can make sure I keep if you start too close to your big yellow dot, it's almost hard to create a good teardrop shape. It always comes out a little bit more round, and I don't really want it round. You may want it round. You could ignore me if you like it round better. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm kind of doing the teardroppy thing. So that's all the way around with tip number 1, and I'm just going to keep going because then you're going to keep going. And we're just going to go up to tip 2. Same color and do the same thing. Nice and high, teardrop shape. This one will likely have 4 dots just like the last time. 4 dots on each side. Okay. Remember, I know I've mentioned this on in other classes if you've done this before with me. What was I going to tell you? Oh yeah, so if you're left or right-handed, you're going to prefer dotting on one side or the other. So I'm left-handed, and my dots are better on the left when I'm on the left side of my plate. So here's what I do. I turn the plate. I never dot over here with my left hand because it won't come out as well as good. So turn your plate using your paper placemat, of course, so that you're dotting on your side of strength. All right. So just to give you an idea, that's what it looks like with 2 rows halfway through. Taking a little arm shake out here. If you're faster than I am, then go right ahead on to using tip number 3 and doing the same thing, and then tip number 4. Just I don't want to, and then I guess I'll get started with that now. So just keep repeating. Tip number 3, you might find that you only have room for the 4 dots on the side. You might have room for 5. Don't push it. Doesn't matter, I know. You're getting tired of listening to me say that. Yep, this one I have room for 5. But I'd rather you say it too much, because it's so easy to think you have to do, you know, it's the next tip up, I need more dots. But when the whole thing comes together, it's an overall look. But it looks like I'm getting 5 pretty consistently here. And part of that's because I'm trying to start my dot pretty high, you know, high enough so that I have room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I like this design because it's amazing when it's fired, but I also like it because it's very relaxing to do. It's probably more relaxing if you don't have to listen to me jabbering, but you do. You can tune me out. I'll have to give you some sort of a signal when it's time to pay attention to me again, but I find this kind of teardrop dotting to be just very peaceful. So now I've used tips 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to go on to tip 4. You know, as these tips get better, this is brilliant, right? As the tips get bigger, the dots get bigger. So make sure on your first one, you're respecting that and leaving enough room to really appear, to make sure you can not run into something else. And this is like what I was talking about before, where it starts to make sense. So when you put your first size 4 dot down and you go down one side, no big deal. But then on your other side, you might want to start with tip number 3 instead, so that that dot is not a size 4 dot, because size 4 is so big. So I'll do one side, starting with the tip 4 at the top. And then I'll switch over to tip 3 for the other side. Okay. I feel like I get a more consistent result that way. One of the things also, when you're starting with a larger tip, you actually can get more dots, because as the dots get smaller, your tool will still retain a little bit more glaze on it. Okay. You have so much more room, because here, you know, as you're going out further on the plate. In this one, I'm getting a lot of 7s even. So, again, doesn't matter. Main thing is, to me, what I find from having done this many times is that you want to retain that teardrop shape. Okay. All right. And that's, whoops, I have migrated. And so that's what our yellow is going to look like. Second bloom of our flower. All right, how you guys doing? Cool. Okay, so I showed you already our Pennsylvania Dutch, for those of you who are done. I'm just gonna chat for a bit, or not done, sorry. So this is our Pennsylvania Dutch plate that we're gonna be doing next week. This is a lot of fun. This is a great step-by-step. It has a lot of different techniques to it. So I think this week we had, what, 3 different ones? This probably has a solid 5 or 6 different techniques to it. This one's got some diamonds and some pyramids and some inverted drags and just a few different things. So I think, I'm hoping you'll think this one's a lot of fun. I know I've had a really good response to it so far. So I think that you'll find this one to be a fun one. So let me know when you're ready, and we're going to move on to our next color. Okay. Janet, was that you? Was that a yes or was that me? That was me. Okay, cool. This one's not too different. It's the same idea. We're just going to start with some different tip sizes. All right, so in this case now, we're going to actually use tip 8, the biggest one, and we're going to use that in the light green. And we are going to do the same thing in terms of putting the dot, but remember not to put that dot, especially now, these valleys, I'm going to use my pointer. The valley here is more severe than it was earlier. So don't go too close in here. 8's a pretty fat dot, so come up a little bit and give yourself some space, okay, for that dot to form. So I'm going to put it very lightly, and then I'm pressing in slowly, so I have a chance to really control it. And then remember, these are the ones where I want you to take some paint up. So after you've put your dot down, pat it to clean off your tip and take off some glaze. Okay, it doesn't have to be a lot, but until, you know, a puddle stops appearing on your tool. All right, so we're gonna do all of our dots and all of our cleaning up. So this takes a little bit longer, but it is worth it. The crack bit is not something I can fix in the kiln, because if you think about it, if the problem is caused by too much glaze, I can't very well go fill in the crack with more glaze. It's not going to solve anything when it remelts in the kiln. It's just going to have the same problem, maybe even bigger. So it's best to try to fix this one right from the get-go. So put it on down and then pat some up. Okay. Doesn't really matter how, you know, big, if you will. If this spreads out a bit, that's really not a problem. This dot can be pretty big. This platter can handle a pretty big dot. So feel free to spread it out a little bit, but let's just make sure we get that dome out of the middle. Okay. 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 So I'll wait while you get those big dots done. Yeah, this is really coming to life quite nicely. So our teardrops on this it's going to be 4 rows again. And the only difference here, other than the color, of course, is that we're going to start with tip 2 instead of starting with tip 1. So this one's going to go with tips 2 through 5. So we'll start with tip 2. And you'll notice that you're going to get those same 3, you know, room for just about 3 dots in there. Whoops, that's yellow. All right, so starting on the line, 1, 2, 3, and coming around the other side. Oops. I dragged my tool and it made two dots run together. So I'm gonna have a little bit of cleaning up today to do today. The thing I want you to remember, and I know I'm a broken record, but is to try to keep that teardrop shape. It's not the biggest deal on this first one. The other teardrops that follow it, you have plenty of room to recover it. I think the key thing is to make sure that first dot is high enough so you can get that more angular shape. All right. So that's going to be our first go round. And then we're going to move up to tip number 3 and do the same color, same idea. Just remember, a little bit higher is better than too low so you can get the right shape. Tip 3 dots may be significantly bigger, so you may not get more than 3 on each side. It's perfectly fine. All right. All right, how's this coming along for you? Starting to look pretty nice. One of the things that's so funny is depending on the colors that are in a particular design, piece may look, frankly, very similar to how it'll look when it's fired or very different. This one I tend to think of as being pretty different, these colors. I mean, maybe this color fires similarly. The yellow really fades, which I think adds to the design rather significantly. And the purple, just what you'll see when we put that on, it'll really come to life once it gets fired. It just looks kind of, I think the official word for that is meh. When it's wet. Oh, I keep migrating, sorry guys. But then it looks really cool. I mean, obviously spectacular when it's fired. So I'm going to go on to my next tip size will be tip 4. And remember, we did 4 on the last one, so remember it gets very big. This one you may be able to, I'm going to actually do this one up here because this one's so big, I'm going to go down to tip 3 for my second side. And again, these are the ones where it's important to start high to make sure once you start getting out this far and you have these larger dots, you want to start with your tip 4 on one side, but then scooch down to tip 3 for your other side. And again, make sure you start high. Okay. It's like if you thought that was a big dot, our last one in this one's going to be a tip 5. So again, start high, give it room to spread out, and keep that teardrop space or shape. And then I'm going to change over to a tip 4 for my second side. right. How are you guys liking this one? Yeah, that's the reaction. I do like this one quite a bit. I tend to like these teardrops once we start using these like larger tips. I think they just, you know, certainly when they're fresh like this, they're just fine, no big deal. But when they're fired, they can be really spectacular. Just such a nice burst of color. It's kind of how this one got its name. Okay, so that's going to be all of our, that's going to take us through the jade color, the green color. Oops, I came back to myself, didn't I? Sorry about that. I don't know why that's happening tonight. It must be far away. So I showed you next week's plate, and while you're dotting, I'll show you just as a reminder. Did I get that right? Yeah. The week after, we're going to be doing coasters. So if you haven't seen these yet, I'm going to take this off for a minute and just put out. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you a set of coasters, and they'll be painted black, just like your plate was today. And then I'm going to demonstrate these 4 different techniques. And then you will be able to decide. So this is done with 6 different colors, and every one of these 4 coasters is using the same colors. It's just a different design. So I'm going to show you how to build each of those designs, and then you can decide if you want to do one of each like I've done here. You might want to do 2 of 2 and 2. You might like 2 designs better. You might want to do them all the same. You might want to do them all the same design but mix up the colors. This one has a little bit more freedom or flexibility with it. So that one's coming up in, whoops, sorry for the noise, in 2 weeks. What I love about the coasters, especially, although I think the platter that we're doing tonight is a fabulous example. These make great gifts. The coasters I've made and given as gifts for the last 1.5 years, and very successfully. You know, the fact that they're hand painted, but they're just a very pleasing, fun, happy design. All right, so are we good with the jade? How are we doing with jade? All right. So the last one that we're going to do in this is going to be the blue. And the blue is going to be the same as the jade. So we're going to use the number 8 tip. Now here, this is interesting, of course, because the blue, it's a little bit wider here. So you don't have, you know, you still want to be far enough away so that you don't hit your yellow. And you definitely want to take off some of that blue like we were talking about. You're putting on and taking it out of the middle so it doesn't dome up. All right, and you can use your lines for this, for the padding on this one. All right. So it'll be one nice big fat blue on the line above the yellow. One of the reasons why these designs are so awesome on the on the pottery is because kind of the kiln magic that takes place. The kiln, you know, the heating of the glazes and the, you know, the melting of the glazes and then the cooling of the glazes just really helps to somewhat ensure that round shape. You know, you may look at your dot and say, well, that's not perfectly round, and I'm sure it's not. But when it melts, it kind of accentuates the roundness of it and can kind of give you that, gives you the more circular look that you might have missed when you were doing it yourself. All right, so when you're done with those, we're going to start with tip number 2, same color, and we're going to teardrop. Now, again, you're going to, what I was saying is you're going to notice on this one that you have more room because it's wider. So before, where my first teardrop was only 3 on each side, this one I will almost always have room. I'm pretty sure you will too. Nothing about me. You should have room for 4. Because you can come almost all the way around on this one because it's, you're not trying to squeeze anything in. Still want to remember that to help maintain that teardrop shape by starting high. I think that's something that's really helps the design come to life. That's how I keep doing that. I get it. But I'm finding this one has more like 4 on each side. You know, there's not even a lot for me to say when we're doing the teardropping. All right, so after 2, it'll be size 3 or tip 3. Remember to start high. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fairly spaced out. But for those of you who tend to, you know, space your dots far apart, you don't want them to be too far apart because you want to retain that kind of teardrop look rather than just have them be just dots, probably in a pattern. So don't feel like you have to spread them out too much. Better to make them a little closer together so it looks like more like a dotted line than just dots in a line. That was deeply profound. Do what you want with that information. One of the things I love about painting with glazes is I'm just pretty much a slob and I'm always ending up wearing so much glaze. And thank goodness glazes are much better than like acrylics because they come out of everything. So far they've come out of everything for me. It's going on 12 years now, so I'm feeling pretty safe. Okay, remember to start high to retain that teardrop shape. How's everybody doing here? Good? Yay! Good, good, good. So all the way around. I wonder if this is as relaxing to watch as it is to do. I hope so. Hope everybody who's just watching along here is like, wow, that looks so relaxing. All right, so we have 2 of our rows, and don't worry if you're not where I am. I'll pause again at the end, but since this is somewhat rote, I don't need to stop after each row. So we did tip 2 and now tip 3, and so of course now I'm going to do tip 4. And remember, the thing about these rows is on the first side with tip all the way around with tip 4, but then I'm going to switch over to tip 3 because when you get to tip 4, it can be too difficult to get a smaller dot when you're starting the second side. So the first side I put my big dot with giving it enough space. And then I'm going to switch to tip 3 for the other side so that my first dot is smaller, more in line with the one on this side. All right. That's an important kind of a technique tip that really helps this design come out nicely. Start with 4, and then on your second side, switch to 3. This is going to be our last teardrop. I don't know if you'll consider that to be a good thing or not. You'll have to let me know. Okay. This is my last one for this row. Okay, wow. I like to look at it on the on the monitor here because it's really very quite pretty. That was not a sentence. Quite pretty. All right, so I'm just going to finish up because you don't need me so unstable. You've done row 2. You've used tip 2, 3, and 4. So here's a real shocker. We're going to use tip 5 for the last one. And again, the same as the one we just did. Make sure you start up far enough so you can retain your teardrop shape. And we're going to start with your 5 and then do one side. Stop. Here, I'm going to use my pointer. Stop when you get close to your jade. There's no reason to try to scooch it in there. Just go to the jade and stop. And then I'm going to use tip 4. I'm going to go down a size for the other side. Okay. So I start with my number 5 dot. Give it some distance so I can help retain that teardrop shape. Stop at the jade. Go down to tip 4 for my second side. Okay. This is where that dot, dot, dot bit comes in quite handy. Because it's kind of cool how almost the dots start to disappear into the, I'm going to say the horizon, but it's not officially a horizon. They just kind of almost, they keep going until they disappear. And it just adds a very three-dimensional look, I think, to this platter. I hope you think so too. Sometimes I almost have to count how many rows I have out so I don't lose my place. 1, 2, 3, 4, you know? It's like, did I do this one already? The last thing I want to do is start a 5th row by accident. Although I can pretty much obviously tell. This is the row, because it's the last row, this is the one that stands out the most. It doesn't have anything covering it. So this is the one you definitely want to make sure you have a good teardrop shape. Janet, did you just send me a thumbs up like you're done with this step already? Have you now gone to the place where you're now faster than I am? I love it. That's so funny. All right, so that's where I'm going to pause while everybody gets caught up. And we've got the basics for our bloom. Stretch out my arm a little bit. So what did I show you? I showed you next week's Pennsylvania Dutch, and then the following week's coasters. So the last week in June, I'm going to be doing this. This is called the pinwheel. Let's see what kind of a glare that has. Oh, hopefully not too bad. A little bit. Let's see if I can fix that. Yeah, so can we get that whole thing in there? If I take off my turntable, yeah, there you go. You can see that pretty good then. So this is the pinwheel. Now this one's done in blues and purples, but when you order this one on the website, you'll see you have lots of different color choices. So you'll have options on that one. Hey, are you guys almost done up there? Or? Okay. So let me know when you're done with your last row of teardrops on the actual plate we're working on today. Okay, Janet, thank you. All right, so now we're going to do some drags. All right, and we're going to use tip 5. And I'm going to show this one to you. I showed it to you when we were practicing, but it's easier to show it to you here. Now, the way I did this, so I'm going to show you the sample, 2 samples. So the first one with the platter, I did it so that the top of the, let me stand up so I can see it on your monitor. Okay, oops, see it, so without, okay, and a pointer. So I have the top of my drag well aligned with the top of my, just a little bit higher, if anything, but basically at the same level as the top of my blue teardrop. So it gives it this overall, and if you have the photo that goes with this, you can see it gives it a very even look. When I did the second one, I did it a little differently. I have a little bit more air in here. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get it on a slant so it doesn't have, and this is not quite as high. Okay, so I didn't fill up the whole space here, and I didn't do it as high. Now, you can still look at this. Let me try to move this out of the way. Sorry. Okay, so you can get the full look at it, and you can see it's still quite pretty, but it's just a little bit different kind of a look. It's, to me, it's a little more dimensional, a little less flat. I don't like one better than the other. I like them both. I just want you to see how you can get 2 different effects, okay, depending upon how big you make your, or where you start your drag. So you're going to want to start your drag. The first one you make is really going to set the tone. No pressure. All right. But what I want you to do then is think about where you're going to start it. So if you're going to go with tip 5 in the purple, all right, if you want it to be a taller one, you need to start it way up here, let it drip on, and then just lift up your tip and lightly drag it down. Then what you're going to do is, using the same tip, we're going to start to the side and do a curve. And the other side and do a curve. And remember, it's the same point is that where you're going to start it up here, but then you're going to lift your tip slightly so that you're getting that point. I'm going to show you something else. I'm just going to put this last one on here. Okay, now I made mine so they're not all the same height. I'm going to do the next one differently, and then I'll come back and show the other thing. So this one I'm starting up high. All right, and coming all the way down. You need a lot of glaze on your tip for this. So now I want to make sure I'm starting this way high and coming all the way down. Now, if it stops like that, I'll just show this to you now. No big deal. Just pick a smaller tip, probably tip number 3, okay, and just come down and drag it down. Okay, that's all you need to do is just pick a smaller tip. If that tip is too skinny like mine is here, then I'm just going to come back with tip 4. All right. So if you want them to all be the same, make sure you start these nice and high. Okay. So does that make sense? I have two different looks here. Okay, one where when this, and you can even come back and reshape it, especially now while the paint is still wet. Okay, you can make them a little bit longer. You can even come back and make this one a little bit taller. So I'm just telling you that so you know what kind of control you do or don't have. I'm almost off the screen there, aren't I? Sorry about that. Sometimes I'm so busy looking at what I'm doing, I don't see the effect it has on you. All right. So this one is going to give you more of like a look that's on the platter. The first one where they're all going to be even. And this one is going to be like the second one I did on the flat platter where it'll have a little bit more dimension. So as I like to say, there's no right way or wrong way. It's just a different look, and I like to give you different options for different looks. So this one I'm going to start nice and high, let it come down. Okay. Start over here, let it drip, and then little drag down. Because what you're doing is you're really kind of dragging that first bit of paint that you put down there. You're not really dragging anything else on your tip. You're just dragging that paint you started with. And so if I didn't get my tips to come down far enough, then I'm just going to go to like a tip number 3 with a little bit more glaze on it and just come back up here and pull it out. I'm hoping this makes sense. Let's see. Oh, good. Cool. Okay, so you're seeing this. Oops, sorry, I moved it out of, all right. So, nice and high, not too much weight. Nice and high, lift the tip. The nice and high part, I'm saying it kind of over and over just because that's kind of the hardest part to remember. Oh, thank you, Angie. I just loving this. I've been doing this for, several years. I'm so excited everybody's kind of enjoying it along with me now. I feel very fortunate. Yeah, so this is good because now you're getting to see that they don't all automatically come out perfectly. But that's fine because you just change it to a smaller tip and pull it down. Change to a smaller tip, add a little bit more glaze, and then lightly pull it down. Whoops. Okay. Any questions? Can't believe school's over, so I don't know, for you guys it's probably even more profound, but for me it's like I can't believe school is over so soon. We're actually this week have been crazy a little bit with our summer program. We have 2 different summer programs. You guys have probably heard me talk about this before, but we have 2 summer programs now. We have starting the week after school so next week's the last week of school, right? So the week after that, we're starting with our summer camp in a bag program where there's 3 projects in every bag, and you can go right on the website, or not you, because you're welcome to come to summer camp. The kids can, pick the theme that they want, and it shows you the 2 main projects, and then the 3rd project is a surprise, because I like to give kids something different that they might not have thought of, and just, get into their own creativity a little bit more. But anyway, it's 3 projects, and then they can either do the projects on their own. Pretty much everything they need is in the bag. Like maybe scissors are not in the bag. That's the only thing that I can think of. And we hardly ever need scissors, so it's not like important. But anyway, and then we're also going to be in our studio Zoom room every morning between 9:30 and 11:30. Emily will be there, and she's there to help kids if they need help with their project, just to chat with them, keep them company. I just feel like, a lot of parents are still having to work from home. And wouldn't it be nice if the kids had something, you know, kind of fun to do in the mornings so that work can get done and I just feel like it's a good way to start the day. So those can be ordered anytime. They'll be ready for pickup next week. But that's just started taking off this week. So to everyone who's already ordered those, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. These are some challenging times for small businesses. And I've kind of been using this time to figure out new ways to work with the businesses in our community, you know, throughout the county, just reaching out to different businesses and making sure that I'm taking advantage of what they have to offer and not doing so much online. Online is not going to save my community. And, you know, kind of not going into the city and things like that. So it's been a good put your money where your mouth is, or I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's it. Put your money where your mouth is and walking the walk. I've been doing a lot of different things with our neighboring businesses and just enjoying it so much. Thanks. Yeah, Angie, check out the website. See if you see anything there that, you know, feel free to tell people about it. I won't argue. All right, I'm going to look for some thumbs up in a minute. All right, you guys tell me when you're done with your drags. I'm not going to rush you. All right. Well, there you have it. So now the last thing that I do, and this is really funny because I'm going to show you this because I did it differently on both of my plates and I want you to see them, you know, both of the samples that I have for you. I'm just going to move this out of the way. The last thing is the big dot, which I did in the salmon color. So obviously you could choose a different color. I chose the salmon because it hasn't been used, it hasn't been used since the middle. So I just like how it pops on the outside. So on this platter, sorry, I'm trying to get it somewhere you can see it. I've put them above the middle drag. Okay, that's where I have them there. I'm just pointing that out to you. Whereas on this platter, okay, I have them above the teardrops. So let me try. See, the problem is with this lighting is you get so you can see, does it matter? Ultimately, it doesn't. So you can decide for yourself. I don't know that it matters because it's not probably based on how much room you have. I think what I liked about on this one, I did it over the teardrop because I have that long line. So I'm coming back to this now, to my sample that I'm showing you. The advantage of this one is that I have the long ray there. But woohoo, I'm pretty sure I can find my center drag. It's not like it's hard. So you guys decide which one you like better. And this is just a big old fat tip 8. Again, I did it in that salmon color. And I'm just putting a big dot now, just kind of right there. And I'm going to do this one above. I decided to go with above the center drag. I do not have an overwhelming reason as for why. I think it's just because the other one I did the other way. And I'm an equal opportunity dotter. And that's a finished platter thing. So the other thing I want to show you then, of course, as a reminder, for those of you who've been with me for a number of weeks, you've seen this before, but how do you clean up your messes? So let's see if I can go back and find a kissing dot. I know I had some at the beginning. Here we go. So now once it's completely dry, I just have 2 dots here that ran into each other. And what's important about this is mostly that you don't really need to reform the circle. You just need to use a sharp edge. I'm just using the edge of a paintbrush. Okay, you can use a toothpick, almost anything. And you're just going to dig lightly, and blow. Okay, as soon as you can see base coat black between the 2 dots, stop. You don't have to worry about reforming the circle. You just don't want to necessarily have things running into each other. So I'm just going to lightly. As soon as I have that black, I'm done. So that is the plate for today. I'm going to put this one back out for you guys to take a look at while you're finishing up. I'm going to hold it on the angle because of the glare. Make sure you can see it. Does anybody have any questions for me while you're finishing up, or you feel like you kind of have it? Yeah, we're good? Okay. Well, I'm going to let you guys go. I'm springing you for the night. Thank you so much for painting with me. Thanks so much for being a part of the studio. If you get a chance, come down and check us out. We are open, and we are pretty different looking than we were 3 months ago. We've been hard at work just changing everything up in the studio, from all the way from the front window all the way to the back. So come take a look, see all the new things that we have, and come play with us. Thanks so much. See you next week.